I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks since we've had a press play. We had a nice little system going of having, I guess, taped ones back to back,
Yeah.
but life gets in the way. Life finds a way, stuff kind of happens.
Uh, yeah.
And we
So
didn't do any for 2 weeks, maybe, I don't know.
yeah, we were supposed to do one last week, but we're bad at communication. One of us should have hit the other one up and been like, "Hey, man, you free?"
I mean, to be fair, if we really wanted to, we would have said something, but we were like, bump it.
Well, I mean, I got busy. I'll admit,
Yeah,
I got really busy, and I was like, well, if he didn't say anything, I'm
yeah,
gonna
it's
keep
all
doing
good.
what I yeah. So, um,
But we're back now with another taped edition. Eventually, we will get back to being live for y'all. We promise. Just we'll figure it out when we can. But yeah, we got some good topics, or at least a big topic to talk about so far.
well,
This
the
is
one
the We
the
Trying channel.
the one we hadn't talked about in 2 weeks. That's that kept us.
Yeah, yeah. So we did do a reaction once the PlayStation Showcase did their thing, and the plan was to do a reaction or follow up to the Microsoft Showcase.
On Monday because
Yeah,
we were gonna do Summer Games Fest because that happened Saturday. That was the day of my kid's
no,
birthday
Summer Games
party.
Fest was Thursday.
No, was that Thursday?
Hmm.
Then what happened Saturday? Because something happened Saturday. My kid's birthday, but there was another gaming. Was that Ubisoft? Was Ubisoft Saturday?
Uh,
Because Microsoft had theirs on Sunday,
I don't remember.
and then Capcom, which I don't know why they had one,
Yeah,
had
that
it
was rough.
Monday. I don't know what Capcom was doing, and then
That was rough.
Nintendo had a direct last week.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
a lot of games have been announced. Oh, and then also the Indie Game Fest was right immediately after Jeff Keighley's thing with was it Devolver?
No, Day of the Devs.
Day of the Dev. Thank you.
Because
Yes.
Devolver they did their thing. That's one I didn't watch. But yeah, we're kind of just
Yeah.
going to talk
Oh,
about it
you
all
didn't
right
watch
now.
You didn't watch Day of the Devs?
No,
Oh, interesting.
not
I
all
would
of it. I
thought
think it was
okay.
like 3 or 4 hours. I just had to do something else. Um,
So I broke it up. I did the Summer Games Fest,
mhm.
and then I saw that it kept going, and so I just like whenever I would get a moment or I was cleaning or doing laundry, I would put it back on, and then that's how I kept up with it.
Okay. Yeah, so we're kind of going to break that down tonight. Whenever you guys watch this, just talk about our thoughts, what we liked, who won the not E3, who didn't
Gamers,
win. Gamers won.
gamers won.
Okay, so let's start with there. Why do you say gamers won?
I think because so here's the thing we talked about. We did the video. I really wish we had better things because this is when I would be like, we talked about the disappearance of E3 and will we still have da da da? And I could be like, boom, watch it here, and then it pops up. But we're not that advanced yet, so go back to our videos and watch that video. But we talked about there not being an E3, and is this Jeff Keighley's ascension to take over that spot? And we talked about why E3 did not keep up with the times, and Jeff Keighley is putting together a smaller gaming thing. And do you even need an E3? And I think that Jeff Keighley did a good job. I think gamers won because all of these things are just basically ads for you to spend $70 if you're buying a console
Sure.
game, or however many dollars you're going to pay for if you are gaming on Steam or Nintendo, or it, they're trying to get you to spend money to buy these games. But I think the presentations were well done. I thought Sony did okay. Sony's at the top of their game. I thought after watching everything, I think Sony did okay. I think they didn't do a good job of telling you what's coming up next. But Sony's like, we're the number one selling game console this generation. So we'll get to it when we get to it. They showed Spider Man. Jeff Keighley came out and was like, hey, man, that's what I got. And he had a coup because he had Final Fantasy when Sony didn't even have Final Fantasy Rebirth.
Sure.
So I think the gamers got a lot because we got to see if you go from Summers, you go from Sony, you got to see 10 minutes of Spider Man. You got a lot of other games as well. Um, a lot of live to service games from Sony. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but
Sony
Keeley,
said they don't care. You're going to buy them. You don't have a choice.
I will not. You know what? Where's my?
Get
No,
out
I
your
won't
fruit
Sony.
knife again. Yeah.
I won't Sony. You can't make me.
Hmm.
Um, made my marathon. I'm not sure about that. But Jeff Keighley was like, here we go, Final Fantasy. Microsoft said, you know what? I know you guys are a little down on us. We're going to show you why. You're going to get Game Pass. And they did, because I am going to get an Xbox for one game, and that is Starfield. And then you come with Ubisoft, and Ubisoft says, hey, you like Star Wars? Didn't want to play Jedi Survivor? We got Star Wars GTA.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying it to them. It felt like a what is it? Watch Dogs, Star
They're
Wars Watch
hoping it's
Dogs.
not Watch Dogs. They're hoping it's not Watch Dogs because remember, Watch Dogs came out with a great presentation,
Mhm.
and that shit ain't look nothing like it. So
Right.
they're
Yeah.
hoping this isn't another Watch Dogs situation.
Well, the people I was listening to was saying they felt like this seemed like Watch Dogs.
Oh, really? Okay.
And granted, they were hoping that it isn't, but they also like something about it just felt like Watch Dogs to them.
Okay.
I only played Watch Dogs for a little bit, so I didn't get that from seeing it. But again, I didn't play enough of it. To me, it just seemed like it was its own thing, and I like that.
To me,
Um,
it was GTA Star Wars.
yeah, sure.
It's you're a morally ambiguous character fighting against the Empire, working with the Empire in certain aspects, basically trying to find your way and get rich to retire.
Mhm.
And I liked what I saw. It was a coup that we had Outlaws in Summer Games Fest. No, Microsoft and their
Yeah, it was in the Microsoft showcase.
it was it a showcase? I didn't want to call it a showcase if it wasn't. In
Yeah.
Microsoft's presentation. And then Ubisoft was like, hey, we got gameplay. You want to see
Mhm.
gameplay? And
Mhm.
so that was a coup because where Sony put a lot of things out that were going to be multi-platform, I feel like Microsoft did a better job of saying, "Hey, don't want to spend $70? Here's Game Pass."
And
Oh,
also, even the things that are going to be multi-platform, like even the things that weren't first party, some of the third party stuff is also going to be on Game Pass too to add to that, which I think is great.
mhm.
A lot of the Persona games that they showed are going to be on Game Pass. Like I'm
Yes.
excited about playing Persona 5 Tactica. I think that's going to be cool. Um, for me, if you say Sony did okay, I I won't disagree. I'm kind of more of okay to disappointed with Sony, but I really felt like Microsoft brought it. We were talking about could Microsoft do that knockout punch?
Or could Sony do that knockout punch? Could Sony basically close
Right,
the door
right.
on Microsoft?
And I don't think they did. Once we saw that showcase, we were like, oh, they left the door open for Microsoft to
Yes,
come.
they
And
did.
Microsoft definitely came hard, I think, with the stuff that they showed. I don't know if you ever played the Fable games or not.
No, not really.
No. I enjoy the Fable games. I think they're fantastic. A lot of fun. And this new one, it looks interesting. I didn't like the character model for the main protagonist.
Mhm.
Something seemed off, like maybe it was an uncanny valley thing. Something seemed off with the eyes on it. But overall, the game looks great. Richard Ayoade looks like Richard Ayoade, just in a
Mhm.
giant form. And even though that trailer might have been 2 or 3 minutes, it definitely had the Fable humor that I'm really looking forward to. That dry British wit humor. Like, oh, this is Fable again, just done by a different studio. So I'm excited for that one for sure.
So I didn't play Fable. It's not my game, but I know a lot of people were really looking for that to come back, and I'm happy for 'em. Like I'm happy that they got their game is back. What I will say is that Microsoft did a good job of because this is the thing we said in the Sony presentation leading up to it. This the Sony presentation came on the heels of Microsoft releasing Redfall at $70 and it being a disaster. Phil Spencer went on the Kind of Funny podcast. Um, went on one of Kind of Funny's podcasts. I can't remember which one it was, but basically
Gamecast.
Gamecast,
Mhm.
and he basically was honest, and a lot of people did not like his honesty, and I thought it was refreshing considering how much quaff the messaging we get from CEOs, game companies. They're shrouded in secrecy to the
Mhm.
point where right now, the Activision deal being blocked by the FTC, who is suing for that deal not to come out. There's so much information. We'll do that in the next press play. But it's a treasure trove of just information we have never seen behind the scenes of gaming that I personally like Phil Spencer being honest, saying, look, Microsoft with Xbox has made some missteps. We're behind the eight ball when it comes to Sony and Nintendo. And we did not do a good job. And we're hoping to do better going forward. And so when Sony did their showcase, we were like, this could be the one if they show Ghost, Last of Us 2, Last of Us Factions, or maybe Last of Us Part 3, if they show Spider-Man along with Wolverine and Metal Gear Solid remake and whatever, all these other gaming companies are working on, this could be the one. And they didn't do that. Whereas Microsoft came and was like, hey, man, you want to play Elder Scrolls in space?
Mhm.
And I was
It's
like, yes,
it's
I do.
always interesting whenever people are at the top of the pyramid, how they don't always. It's like they have a stumbling block and they can't continue that success, and somebody else tries to come on top of them. Not to say that Microsoft's now going to come and dominate or anything, but just Sony is clearly not counting Nintendo because Nintendo's kind of doing its own thing and they're successful, making all
Yep.
kinds of bukus of money and doing whatever. But just looking at Xbox and Sony are, yeah, PlayStation and Xbox. PlayStation is definitely the number one. And it's just weird that they didn't have a harder punch. Granted, maybe they're looking at a long-term goal of here's an idea of these, like you said, these free-to-play games, these multiplayer games, these multiplayer offerings, this suite that we're doing. It's going to be something that we're really excited about. You just have to kind of trust us a little bit and see
Hmm.
once you see gameplay of it. And I don't know who Phil Spencer talked with. I don't know if he talked with Sarah Bond or Matt Booty or whoever said, "Yo, we got to show some stuff." And
Hmm.
I was excited to see at least for all the first party stuff, and they talked about it, but everything was either in engine or some version of that, so it wasn't just full CG stuff. So it has me excited that okay, stuff can look like this. Now I do want to see more gameplay for stuff like South of Midnight or whatever,
Hmm.
the game that's from, was it a Rational Game? No, Compulsion Games. I don't know, one of the studios that they bought, the same studio that did We Happy Few, I believe, is the one who's doing that. Um, Compulsion, I think. And it's a cool premise of this girl who has powers in the bayou with mystical
Yeah.
stuff. It seems cool. I just want to know what the actual gameplay is.
Yes.
I have an idea of what it looks like, but like, what are you doing from
Like
there?
that art style was very intriguing.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you think Microsoft kind of silenced some of the critics with that show? Are people still gonna be like, no, this wasn't enough. We need more? I mean, I feel like they kind of hit on a little bit of everything. What do
I
you
think
think?
in my opinion, they did, and I'm not a micro, and I hate this, and I know I have been a Sony fanboy for on this channel where everybody's like, "Oh, you love Sony." I do love a lot of the games that I played on Sony. I had a 360 and I had a PlayStation, and I always have loved PlayStation because that's the system I fell in love with because they had Metal Gear Solid, and I will always be beholden to Sony to a certain extent because I love that franchise. I bought a PlayStation 2 and 3 for those games. I
Mhm.
like you bought at the time you bought consoles, but so Xbox had games, Lost Planet, Mass Effect, Gears of War. I never was a big Halo person, but I in my opinion, Microsoft did a very good job of saying we haven't abandoned this system.
Mhm.
And that is a problem for gamers in the past who have bought a system, bought into the ecosystem, and the parent company has decided we're not going to support this anymore. Whether it be a live service like a Stadia, whether it be the Nintendo Wii U, where Nintendo was like, "Yeah, we tried it, didn't work."
Mhm.
Um, and it's not that the systems were bad. Sega Dreamcast. It's not that the systems themselves were bad. They just were not utilized and they didn't catch on like some other things did. I think Microsoft did a good job of saying, look, we're working on stuff. Stuff is coming because the big knock on Microsoft was that there are no first party games to buy an Xbox for. Yeah, Game Pass is great, but why would I buy Game Pass if I can still buy and play on my PlayStation and still have my digital library of Sony games that I want to play as well. And I think Microsoft made a very good case for it's not here, not yet, but you will be able to play these games day and date on because that was the one thing out of every game that they showed at their showcase.
Mhm.
Day and date Game Pass, Game Pass, Game Pass, Game Pass. And I'm here to say I am not excusing, no way am I excusing Microsoft for that bird turd that they dropped that was Redfall. However, comma, if you had bought Game Pass and played it on Game Pass, you would have saved some money. But if you play this game in the ecosystem of a Steam game, you were out $70. And that's a big FU. So I'm not giving them a pass. What I'm saying is the value of Game Pass becomes more reasonable when you look at it from the lens of here are all the games you will play day and day on Game Pass. Forza, Starfield, Flight Simulator. Um, I was interested in with the Bookwalker game. I thought that was an interesting uh, Sinuous Saga, Hellblade 2, the first Descendant. I know that's a live the service game, but I think there were some games that really moved the needle that said, "Hey, maybe check out Game Pass if you have an Xbox." And I think that's what Microsoft is trying to do. Hey, we may not be your primary gaming system, but if you get a secondary one, consider us.
Well, I think that goes back to their whole idea of having those two different type of Xboxes, right? You have the Xbox Series X and then the Xbox Series S, which gets you, you don't pay as much, but you can still play those top tier games, those top tier Microsoft games on the system. Um, do you think this? So we talked about Xbox, we talked about Sony, and we talked a little bit about Summer Game Fest. Do you think this is the future going forward in terms of because we've heard the reports that next year's E3 and the E3 after that may not happen. They're
Yes,
trying to find a place. Has Jeff Keighley killed the beast that is E3? Has he conquered it?
I'm not sure. I will say that. So here's a report from The Verge. According to a report from the Los Angeles City Tourism Commission, E3 won't be back in LA for 2023 and 2025. And that's when they plan out like hotel bookings and the fiscal year, what projected things are coming out. And that's a big deal. So here's the thing that's from The Verge. The ESA has responded. Game Rant from Jay Brody Sherry. This is 6 days ago. The ESA speaks out on the recent rumors that the once annual E3 might be canceled for the next 2 years. ESA has addressed the recent rumors that E3 won't be held for the next 3 years, while the annual Electric Entertainment Expo convention was once a definitive outlet for new games. Hold on. The ESA denied such claims and said that no final decisions have been made regarding future E3 events. However, the company has pointed out that it is currently discussing the future E3 in the wake of the previous two cancellation. So anything is possible at this point. I think it. I think that E3 is going to come back in some way, shape, or form. The question is, will it come out and be a dud? A fart in, or will it be a fart in church where it's noticeable? Like people are like, what was that? Jeff Keighley I think, a very good job pulling off a cheaper version of E3. The difference is there is no media wasn't there as far as for like hands-on gaming for like this huge spectacle that used to be E3. Jeff Keighley had a very smaller event. It was probably not as cost it wasn't as costly as E3 was. So it's possible Jeff Keighley could be onto something, especially because that wasn't a definitive, yeah, we're coming back. That
Yeah,
was just,
I
hey,
think
we
the
need to
thing.
get something. We need to get something out there, a press release that says, hey, we still here.
Yeah, I think the thing that I read or something. So this is essentially third person because I heard it from somebody else, but it's from who is the editor in chief for Polygon now? Chris Plant.
Oh, it's not the young lady, uh, the woman who was doing the comic stuff on YouTube that I liked.
Susanna Polo. I don't think she's the
Yes.
editor in chief. No,
Oh, okay.
I believe it's Chris Plant. I think.
Okay.
But he has said something to the effect of he from his sources that people said Jeff Keighley's event was easier and cheaper
Yes, it's
in
definitely
terms of
cheaper.
access, which is that's I mean two huge things that are nail in the coffin for E3.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen
Especially because we just talked about this in an age where games are $70, consoles are $500, and if you're PlayStation, you want people to buy your fancy hat at $550, which is $1,000 in your ecosystem. On top of an inflation, housing prices are going up, rent is going up. You don't have the money to spend on a hundreds of thousands of dollars on to go to LA to stay for a week because you're
sure,
going to be there a week.
yeah, uh,
Parking, traffic, yeah, it's not worth it for a lot of these companies.
yeah. Um, but I think the thing that was noticeable is instead of having like those big flashy displays and stuff like that, they were still able to bring in smaller amounts of media to cover different things. I
Mhm.
think this one had more
I
media and Twitch streamers and influencers who were able to come and
IGN
check
was
out
definitely
stuff.
there because
Yeah,
um, I saw a couple of people reporting online and some of the live reports that they had there.
yeah,
Um,
I saw their shows, Summer Game
yeah,
Fest shows. Um, yeah, I think Jeff has found a formula that seems to work. And the one thing I like about Jeff Keighley with how he does things is once he does it the one year, I feel like every year he does it, they get better and better.
mhm.
Like they're not perfect, but they're like this Summer Game Fest was better than the one before and better than the one before that. And that the pacing of it, I think it might have been like 2 hours. There's probably 20 to 30 minutes he probably could have cut out. I think that would have made it a little bit tighter. But I'm wondering if he needed that stuff to sell for revenue time and ad time because for many we may think, oh, it's just free, whatever. Like, no, he still has to figure out a way to pay for
Yeah.
all this type of stuff.
I mean,
So
it's a
he's got to,
business.
yeah, he's got to make advertising revenue dollar. Um, I feel like he did a good job in terms of keeping the commercial stuff to a minimum while still giving us the content that we wanted and having that end with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, that trailer. I mean, that blew the house down. Everybody was waiting for that. He's like, he knew he had it, and I think it was good. He started with Prince of Persia, ended with Final Fantasy. It was good stuff.
I will say this: I really thought that Prince of Persia was something different, and I know a lot of people are looking for that Prince of Persia remake. But I think in this age of 2D side scrolling, where you have like Dead Cells, Hollow Knight, um, Catherine, there is a market for those smaller games. And I'm gonna be honest with you, now that I'm a father and a husband and I have a full-time job, I don't have 80 hours to sink into one game, which is
Mhm.
why I'm not playing Final Fantasy. And I used to play those back in the day. I just don't have 80, I don't have 100 hours to sink into Assassin's Creed, you know, fantasy, whatever. This is a new one. So Mirage was a welcome addition for me. Um, Prince of Persia, the 2D scroller, was nice. I love the art style behind it. I love the way they played with time. So those smaller games are a big deal to a lot of gamers because there's so many games out there. Like what I mean, look at your list of games, your backlog. And that's not even including the games that are coming out this year between Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Diablo 4, Starfield, Spider-Man. We know we're getting another Call of Duty. We're Destiny just keeps dropping new content, even though the system, the stuff keeps shutting down. You got Overwatch 2. There's a shit ton of stuff to play, and you just don't have the time. So I think that was great to show the Day of the Devs showing smaller games and showing that they can be fun, just as fun as a AAA game, but maybe don't cost you X amount of dollars. Look at Stray. Stray was a big game, and
But what
As
do you
for
mean define big game?
a big game, as far as like it caught the market by storm, but it wasn't like it's not Horizon Zero, it's
Mhm.
not Starfield, but it attracted a lot of people. A lot of people like that game. And guess what? Guess what's coming to Game Pass in the next week or so?
It's straight
Stray.
coming to Game Pass?
hmm
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's the one thing I'm wondering for Jeff Keighley is, can he continue to get gaming companies and developers to keep giving him access versus them doing their own showcase? Because we saw Ubisoft did their own showcase. Capcom, I don't know why they did their own showcase, but they felt they needed to. Capcom, stay home. You didn't show us anything we
I
like.
mean, I I felt like Ubisoft could have stayed home.
I will
Like
say
that
this.
showcase sucked.
I,
The presentation was garbage.
I
Just
will
give me
say,
a couple of trailers. I don't need
now
that showcase.
remember I asked you about that because I was like, as I was watching, I was like, do they normally do this? And you were like, yeah, they always are weird. And I'm like,
Yeah. So the like the way they presented was weird, but also just like the overall presentation just looked bad overall. Like I don't know who was running cameras and stuff. I mean, it felt like it could have been.
hey,
I don't
Ubisoft,
know.
call me. I
There
got
you
some
go.
ideas.
Yeah. Um.
I'm willing to freelance. Hey, fly
Yeah.
me out there. Hey man, I'll get you running. I know how to handle that stuff. But I will say this: I don't know because I've only glimpsed at some of their stuff pass. I don't mind Ubisoft doing something. The way they did it though sucked.
Right.
So I liked what they showed though. I did
Okay.
like what they showed. The presentation wasn't great, but that's what I'm wondering. Can another gaming company can say like, I don't know, Konami can be like, hey man, if Ubisoft can do it, we can do it. Square Enix. So that's my question going forward because it is cheaper because Nintendo, who's on the ESA board, they're a partner in ESA, doesn't even show up to E3.
Hmm.
They just do their Nintendo Directs. So how does Jeff Keighley not succumb to the same problems that beset the ESA and E3? That's my question going forward.
I think he has a model kind of in place. The biggest thing is the people seem to like working with him more than the ESA. I think just cutting those costs down
hmm
and you just say, "Hey, Jeff, I don't have to be in person. I can just ship you a trailer and you can put it on a
hmm
server and do whatever." That's easy for us because one thing I've always heard is that whenever people show demos at big presentations, that takes away from like development time or cuts into development time of the actual game because you have to cut a vertical slice out of a game, get that running so that it looks halfway decent, and that's time you're taking away from the rest of the development team. So not having to deal with all that, I think it speaks volumes for Jeff and just be like, oh yeah, Jeff is easy to work with. We can get all this stuff. And if you look at it, he continues to improve these shows and figure out the timing and get bigger and bigger exclusives. So I think I think he's definitely in a better spot than E3 was just based on that.
Well, let me ask you this because you talked about that. Would it be easier then for a developer to say, maybe he does his and I don't know if this is possible. We've talked about marketing for movies where in other words a budget for a movie can be $200 million and then the marketing for it can be anywhere from 50 to $100 million, and that's also ties into like when they do the Oscars, you have to budget in marketing because you have to campaign for an Oscar, you have to send emails is expensive, to send trailers and all this stuff that's expensive. Could part of the budgeting and the marketing be going forward make it easier if like let's say a Diablo 4 you do a beta in conjunction with Summer Game Fest? Would that be something that would be easier versus then basically cutting a slice out of the game to make it like so you don't show your flaws like a Redfall? Because that was one of the big problems. A lot of gamers or social media influencers and outlets said when they played that slice of Redfall they hit a lot of the problems. So they couldn't get a clear, accurate account of how bad or good that game was. They had issues, but they were like, this is just a slice. And they were very forgiving versus a beta where you're like, you're testing the game. The game isn't necessarily done, or maybe an alpha. Is that do you think that would be easier? And could Jeff Keighley pull that off?
I think that would be beyond what Jeff Keighley would need for his thing, because Jeff Keighley's more just like, hey, check this out. This is a cool gameplay thing.
Okay.
I don't think he's trying to be the distributor of said betas or anything like that. I don't
Well,
think
not
that's
necessarily a
his
distributor, but like that's part of
avenue.
the marketing. Like he says, because to me that would be a big get. Like in other words, you talk about like going forward, how do you improve it each year? Would that be an improvement if you saw a game on Summer Games Fest and then shortly after Jeff Keighley is like, okay, and the beta will be such and such date. If you watch this, kind of like he does with Twitch on the game awards. There's always like, remember last year they were giving away Steam Decks if
Mhm.
you watched it on Twitch. Um, I think that's one of the things I'm wondering is that going forward, is that something he probably can shoot for to make this a more profitable? Because that's the problem we just talked about. E3 cost them money, and
Yeah.
it didn't seem to be worth the cost benefit analysis to keep going. Whereas Summer Games Fest, you ship them a trailer, but going forward, Jeff is going to want more.
Well, I don't. For me, I like the format that this had in
Okay.
terms of what he would do is every once in a while he would show trailers and demos and stuff like that, and every once in a while he would bring out a developer to somebody to
Hmm.
kind of expand more on said product, whether it
Yeah.
was talking about Spider-Man 2 and giving us a date, or Ed Boon coming out and talking about Mortal Kombat 1 and giving us stuff like that. I like the format of
Okay.
doing that because that doesn't really happen, at least not in that format or that tempo like he had it, where you show a couple of uh, game trailers, then you do an expanded look at a game and somebody talks about it. If he were to keep doing that, I think that would be a great way to set him apart from all the other presentations that people do.
Because Ubisoft was very weird in their presentation. Capcom, I don't even remember. I just remember it was bad. Um, I Here's my question: give me three games outside of Sony that caught your attention that you were like, I'm buying that. I don't know when, but I'm going to buy that game.
You said outside of Sony?
Outside of Sony, because we already talked about Sony, the
Oh yeah,
showcase.
that's easy. Fable, Starfield, I already bought. I bought the special
Hmm.
edition,
Okay.
$300 version. I bought that. Star Wars.
Which one? Outlaws?
Was there another one?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think so. I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
just
Outlaws.
Outlaws.
Okay.
Yeah, those three looked awesome.
Okay.
And that was just three. Like I don't even know if those are the three that I'm most excited about. I just remember those. Those look great.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Uh, Starfield, Alan Wake 2, and it's a toss up because there was a lot of indie games that I liked as well. Um, I really enjoyed. I'm gonna say Star Wars. I'll say Star Wars because Outlaws. So I played Fallen Order. I like What is it? Survivor? Is that the new one? Is that Jedi
Yeah,
Survivor?
Jedi Survivor. Yeah, I think it's called Jedi
Yeah.
Survivor.
So I'm interested in it. I haven't bought it. I'll buy it eventually when it goes on sale, but it's not one of those things where I'm like, I have to own this immediately. Outlaws looks something that I'm more interested in. Um, but the thing is, those are the big games that just right off the tip of my tongue that I'm like, okay, I'm interested. But there was a lot of games that were announced. Um, the game where the young lady was killed and then she had copies of herself. It's a thing. It's a
Yeah. That was
uh,
yeah. I can't remember what it's
uh,
called.
then you
Listen something with an L. I
yeah,
don't know.
and then you've got from um uh Pal World, which was Pokemon with guns, caught my attention.
Yeah, that looks wild.
I
Not for
like
me, but okay.
I want to know more. Um, I do want to know more. I'm trying to think of what else I saw. Um, the Hold on, Under the Waves. That was something that really caught my attention. Uh, That was a submarine game. Lisfenga, the time shift warriors, a new hack and slash. So
Hmm.
a lot. That's why I was talking about a lot of little games. You know what? I'm sorry, not little games. A lot of the smaller,
Not AAA
not
developed. Yeah.
AAA games really caught my attention. Under the Waves really intrigued me. Lisafang, I thought was a very new title. Um, the book game that I'm trying to remember, the Book Walker, where basically the character walks between books, and they were like he looks like he's been put together by like pages. That really intrigued me. Um, I don't care about Towerborn or 33 Immortals from Microsoft, but that first Descendant kind of caught my eye.
Okay.
Um, so that's one of the things that I think I liked about this is that there were a lot of games that made me say, "Huh, okay." The Bookwalker, Thief of Tales, um, that I was like, "Okay, you got my attention." And that's one of the things that I think because you used to get on me too about and like challenge me. Have you heard of this game? Have you heard of this game? You would always talk about Ori Will of the Wisp,
Hmm.
Overcooked, and then which made me find Limbo, Grease, uh, Journey, the game from the developers behind Journey. What was that game where the guy was like writing?
He was surfing a
Yeah,
sword. Yeah.
yeah, like that
I can't
really.
remember what it's called, but yeah.
So like little games like that really caught my attention. So that's why I really enjoy Day of the Devs. Um, so going forward, what's one of the things that you think? Because I liked all the games that were announced. What do you think needs to be better about these presentations? Because for me, I thought even though it was a big get, and I want to see Twisted Metal,
That was a
I,
waste of time.
that was a waste of time. I agree with you.
That
Um,
was nothing.
and
I mean, I imagine Sony paid a lot of money to Jeff to run that. So Jeff said, "Hey, we need that money to generate whatever." But it just didn't like the scene just felt incomplete. Like I kind of want to see more of a complete scene or show me something like that. But
not
yeah,
only
that was
that,
really a waste of time.
it didn't really resonate with me.
Yeah, and also if you want to see somebody have fun using the thong song, watch Legends of Tomorrow because they did it great in one of their season finales. But um, yeah, it was kind of a nothing. And we didn't even see people shooting bullets from cars. It's
Yeah,
Twisted
like that
Metal.
was
It was
that was
crazy.
weird. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
really really weird. So I thought having Optimus Prime in Fortnite was cool, especially considering when it came out. Transformers was coming out. Also, go see Transformers. I think I think Transformers: Rise of the Beast may be one of the best Transformers movies, and I'm I myself am shocked by saying this. Pete Davidson should have been a Transformer years ago. He stole the show. He was hilarious. As Mirage, he was one of the best parts of that movie. Um, so I think that was an interesting tie-in, which was smart in my opinion. Um, for me, my question to you is: Were you how excited were you for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Like, did you know that was coming?
No,
Really?
I thought no. I mean, well, we knew that something was coming because the PR company, or maybe might have been Square Enix itself, they were tweeting about different things like, "Oh, this is stuff is lining up." So we knew a trailer was coming eventually. We just didn't know when.
Hmm.
Um, but as the Game Award or the Summer Game Fest kind of went on in that press conference or that or whatever, we're like, okay, this could be the end of it. Um, I did a good job. I was proud of myself because I didn't get to watch it live because I was working that Thursday. So I watched it the day after or something like that.
Hmm.
And that's what it was. I think that's how we were talking about it. So it happened Thursday, but I hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And I watched it Saturday. So that's why you thought it was on Saturday, maybe.
Well, I knew something was Saturday too because we were getting updates
Hmm.
of something happening Saturday. I just don't remember what it
Yeah.
was. Um,
But yeah, for me, that was a great. I think Jeff. I think Jeff has developed relationships with Western studios and Eastern studios to have stuff like that. Because if you remember before this, he had the first trailer for Elden Ring that everybody's waiting for, like the first big gameplay
Really, you
trailer
know
for
what? I
Elden Ring.
forgot all about that.
Yeah, it wasn't at Summer Game Fest. It might have been at like uh what's the thing he does in August? Or no, it was Summer Game Fest, I think. Like 2 or 3 years ago, he had the first gameplay trailer. So Jeff has those relationships. He is traveling all the time to different places. So I think he's going to continue to do that as long as he people seem to like him. I haven't really heard any crazy stories negatively, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
The one thing I think Jeff brings to gaming that I appreciate that we've talked about this before, and I'm going to beat this like a dead horse in a broken record, that one of the things I think gaming needs is a face,
Mhm.
whereas gaming doesn't have a face. As far as like within movies, you can promote a movie because you have stars, you have recognizable people, stars who can go out on the red carpet, who can go out on these nightly shows and be like, hey, go watch my next installment of, or I was a tour de force in this movie. You have that. Music the same way. You can go on tour. Your music speaks for itself. Gaming is a little different, and gaming is secretive in how they share and how, in the data, how they configure their numbers. It's very secretive considering how much money it makes. And I think having Jeff Keighley do this does a very good job of that. This is somebody who can be the face of gaming, who hasn't been marred by Me Too. He seems to have, like you said, the relationships. We know Kojima likes him.
Mhm.
um, and I think that is good for gaming in the sense of he can get to a point where he can be the face of gaming to break down those barriers so that gaming isn't just reduced to, oh, the on the whatever, the old people talk. And because we both work in media where a gaming story has to be big to break into our mainstream media discourse.
Mhm.
I was talking to one of my coworkers, and me and her, Beth, we were talking about, like, I was explaining how, like, Live Golf right now, everybody's like, they, the Saudi, the Saudi fund, they could have bought golf or invested $3 to $4 billion, and everybody's talking about it because
Mhm.
it's a big deal. And I was like, Activision could be bought by Microsoft for $70 billion. That's worth more than most sports leagues.
Mhm.
And I was like, we won't mention it. I think having Jeff Keighley be the face will could get him onto these platforms outside of the regular, outside of the social media stratosphere, outside of the news media that normally covers. He can get on CNN, he can get on MSNBC, Fox News, and all these different places to talk about gaming on a level that normal traditional media does not cover. So for me, I like the fact that Jeff does this because we need that. If ESA and the E3 is going away, we need somebody who can be that face to that can be that advocate for gaming.
Yeah, I think the only thing that is always questionable is because he has such good relationship with some people. You're like, well, are you crossing the line between just being a pure fanboy for this person? Like his relationship with Hideo Kojima was kind of like, all right, like, should we care so much about Death Stranding, or is it just you just love this game so much because that's your boy?
No, we should care about Death Stranding.
Okay, calm down.
I'm just saying, I think love it or hate it. I think Death Stranding and this is why I think it's so important for gaming, for people to understand and get their head around the fact that gaming is commercial, is art. It's commercial art, but it's still art. It's still telling a story. Now, it may be divisive in the sense of the gameplay and you may not like it. And I understand that. I'm not here to tell you it is for everybody, but I do believe that game really pushed the boundaries and really had some themes that really resonated with people, whether it be the pandemic, the isolation, the packaging, the social aspect
I'm
of the
sorry,
game.
sir. Did you say the packaging?
the packaging. In other words, like delivering packages, that was a big deal for people. Remember, Amazon Prime memberships exploded, skyrocketed. DoorDash, all these different things, meal prep kits. That was in the game. This idea that the porter was the one who was connecting the strands for all these people. These ideas that Hideo Kojima put in his game really resonate with a lot of people. Now, I'm here to tell you that that game may not be your cup of tea. It was for me. But I think that is an important game, and I think you're right to be suspicious because as a journalist, you're naturally questioning things. And I think you're right to be suspicious, to be like, okay, you fanboying, or can you be objective? But I also think that Jeff Keighley is the person to break down why that game is so important to gaming. I think Jeff Keighley is very important to break down why Last of Us 2 is so important by interviewing Neil Druckmann, because we know that the Last of Us storyline was a video game first, and that Neil Druckmann was working with Craig Mazin on the actual show. I remember watching threads of people who were like, they're going to mess up the show. And it's like, do you not know who this person is to be working on the show? Like, I think Jeff Keighley is that person who can do that, who can bridge those gaps for people. Who you talked about, Ori Will of the Wisp, and how that game was very touching for you. I think Jeff can talk about this AAA game like a Death Stranding to an Ori Will of the Wisp and give you a passionate answer of why both of these games are important.
Okay. So then I feel like we kind of hit on everything.
Mm-hmm.
We hit all the different places. Oh, I don't know if we talked about this. Do you think, I'm trying to figure out how to word it. Should there be some type of governing body that says, hey, you can have a press conference, you can't have a press conference?
No.
Okay.
I don't, because I'm the ESA, in my opinion, was that.
Mm-hmm.
And look what happened.
Sure.
They can't even get their own gaming conference or whatever up because they couldn't change with the times. And I think Jeff Keighley was one of those people. And before Jeff Keighley even did his Summer Games Fest, Nintendo was the first people to be like, hey, we don't need this.
Yeah.
We just do our own thing. And but let's be honest, Nintendo's always moved to the beat of their own drum. They do their own thing regardless of what the industry says that you should do. They were the first. Now, do some companies don't need to do one? Yeah, we've talked about Capcom was not good. And Ubisoft, even though they had a great showing of games, it wasn't a great show. But I'm all for you trying.
Yeah, and I guess the if that's the one thing I could say about Summer Game Fest is it's kind of loosely organized because so many people are doing their own thing. The one thing that was great about E3 is that essentially it was a week. It was a lot of information. It was all concentrated to 1 week. But with this Summer Game Fest thing, I think the first thing was the PlayStation thing happened before Summer Game Fest, right? Yeah. Okay. So over the course between Sony doing its thing, all the people doing their things, it might have been 2 or 3 weeks that you kind of had different stuff kind of spread out. And I like the idea of having it all concentrated in 1 week of like, okay, here we go. You kind of got to gorge yourself, but at least it's all concentrated in one area. So it's easier to focus, I think.
And here's the thing. Even though we had this 3 weeks of gaming where Nintendo just did their direct not too long ago, I think one of the things.
And as we're filming this, Annapurna did their thing yesterday. So that's what it been.
So they're getting into gaming and their games look actually pretty interesting. But let's not forget the biggest, as Michael has educated me, because I always thought E3 was the biggest. It's not. What is it? Gamescom?
Gamescom, yeah.
In Cologne, Germany.
Just
is the
biggest. People, yeah.
And so I don't know if Jeff wants to get to that point. I don't know what his overall goal is.
Well, because he already has a Game Fest thing, right? He has opening night Game Fest. Or one night, whatever it is, ONL, whatever it's called.
So what I'm saying is, I don't know what his overall goal is like, or he could just be the He could be like, hey, I just like doing this piecemeal stuff. We have packs um, that happens. I don't know what the overall goal is, but I think Gamescom is the biggest. And I'm all for, if you think you can pull it together and you're not a con man, you know, I say do it. Because here's the thing, Jeff Keighley doing Games Fest to me was great because after Games Fest was Day of the Devs, and I have gotten away from indie gaming and just stuck with my console. I have now gotten back into indie gaming because um, I bought a Steam Deck. It's over there. Um, so I've been playing a lot of smaller games, games on the go, and that's something I hadn't gotten into. I wouldn't have gotten into if I hadn't gotten the Steam Deck. And Jeff Keighley was a great segue into that Day of Devs. And I think a lot of people would have overlooked Day of the Devs if it wasn't tied to Summer Game Fest the way it was. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, I had heard of Day of the Devs, but I didn't really pay that much attention to it. But I watched the whole thing and I enjoyed it. Now the Devolver stuff I thought was weird, but you've told me
Awesome.
they're weird no matter what.
Yeah,
So, but I enjoyed it, and I really did like seeing a lot of these smaller games. So, and I like their little gaming platform that they did. I think they did a really good job of showing just regular people, people who are gamers and passionate developers about their little platforms. So, and I'm sorry, I don't want to make it seem like I'm derogatory, like oh, little no, but they didn't have $1 million backing them. They don't
mhm,
have a multi-million-dollar campaign like Diablo does, building freaking statues and putting up, billboards in Times Square. Like these are people who are passionate about the game that they're making and they want you to play it. Um, so that for me, I'm hoping we see more of that, more people getting out there making their own game. And if the AAA people get into it too, I'm happy with that too because those people who make those games are passionate about their games. We out of this last week, we saw that there were 300 people at the height working on Horizon Zero. Everybody who was working on Horizon Zero wants people to play that. Nobody gets into a game and it's like, I want to make a shitty game. It's,
mhm.
they want something. It's like when you make a show, you're making a show because you want people to watch the news and be educated, but to see the work that you did. I think game developers and game designers are the same way. They want to tell
Sure.
a good story. And so if there's an opportunity for them to platform and show that stuff to the world, I'm for it. Now, just make it better than what Ubisoft did.
There we go. On that, folks, that'll wrap it up for us. Make it better than what Ubisoft did. You know where to find us.
Friend
Thanks
of
for
the show,
being here.
Ubisoft.
Friend of the show, Yves Gumont. Talk to us. We'd love to talk to you, sir.
Yep.
See, tell us how you're going to make Ubisoft better. But yeah, that'll be it for this one. We'll be back hopefully next week. Maybe we'll be live. Maybe we'll be taped. We don't know. We'll figure it out.
Hopefully next week, if we do it, we will have a response from the FTC or the FTC lawsuit about Activision. Will we have an answer by then?
I don't know. I think the judge has like 2 weeks to decide.
I
So
thought it was a
maybe,
week. Okay.
I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. We might have more stuff to talk about.
Oh,
Folks, that'll do it for us. Find us YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. We trying y'all, all those places.
mhm.
Until next time, we out.
Deuces.
See ya. Is this one? No, which one I need? I need that one. There we go. Later.